This is Dr. Wayne on the 16th of May 2025. And today I want to offer both praise and caution to Ms. Suzette Martin, Deputy Commissioner of Police in the TTPS. Now, two of the most difficult jobs to hold in the police service is head of the Professional Standards Unit and head of Crime and Intelligence. Two positions that Ms. Martin has held as head of Professional Standards and now hold as Deputy Commissioner. And why they are difficult? Because the person has to make important decisions about arresting and charging police officers and other high-profile persons in the country. And in order to do that job well, you will rub some people the wrong way. And you will not be liked by a lot of people, especially if you're doing your job well. Can you all remember the old days when Professional Standards in the old days used to be called I&I and it was headed by Cyrasius Liverpool? Well, I can tell you, a lot of people didn't like Cyrasius Liverpool, even though it was said that he was doing a great job. I myself didn't like him. But that's a story for another day. But in the case of Miss Martin, I have spoken to a lot of officers about her because I like when I'm making comments to understand the situation and people rather than just talking off the top of my head like some people who lost the deposit in the last elections. Miss Martin is said to be a knowledgeable, conscientious, hard-working police officer of high integrity and who is also a pit bull of an investigator who will grab onto something and work it until a proper outcome is achieved. But at the same time, when you're doing that particular job, sometimes there's the risk of being over-enthusiastic, of trying to ensure that there is an outcome that is wanted or expected by people in society or by the government or by the hierarchy of the police service. And that sometimes may lead to people making mistakes. So this is not only for Miss Martin, this is also for other officers who have or might in the future hold those positions or similar positions there too. Now, the three incidents I want to talk about will show you how it's easy to become victimized by your position and not so much by your actions, because any other person holding the position might have faced the same problems, but how it was dealt with becomes the cautionary part, which I want to try to advise on if my advice will be accepted by anyone. I don't know. The first incident is the accident in which Miss Martin was involved on the priority bus route. Accidents happen all the time, and in 95% or more of the cases, there is no offense committed by drivers or non-prosecuted. But in this case, a very senior officer investigated the matter, determined that there was no offense committed, and wrote it off NFPA, which means no further police action. But then the Police Complaints Authority gets involved, jumps in without all of the evidence, or sufficient evidence in my opinion, and requests the DPP's office to prosecute the officer. So the file goes back to the Commissioner of Police, Earl Haywood Christopher, who then hands the file over to the same officer who had investigated and cleared Miss Martin. And then that officer decides to prosecute Miss Martin on the same file and same case. Now, what is a problem as well for me is that both parties were at the time, that is Miss Martin and the senior officer, in the process of recruiting a deputy commissioner all around that time, where everybody was in the basket jockeying. And also, it is said or alleged that there was an investigation against that officer being led by Miss Martin. So I think it was a wrong or bad decision of Miss Harewood Christopher to put the file in that officer's hand. And eventually, the case was dismissed by the DPP after they got camera footage, from what I understand, showing clear evidence that the officer committed no crime and there was some sort of contributory negligence on the part of the victim, who, by the way, didn't die, as some people were saying. That outcome cannot be faulted to Miss Martin, and it was wrong for her to be lambasted by people and say that she was facing a charge, how they could promote her, and all that nonsense. Coming out of bad decisions after bad decision. The second incident, for which I think she has to take serious caution, is the Brent Thomas matter, where she, together with other officers, went on a plane to Barbados, where Brent Thomas was arrested and handed over to them and put back on a plane to come back to Trinidad and Tobago without there being a warrant of arrest and without there being any of the normal extradition treaty requirements and provisions, extradition warrant as such, under mutual legal cooperation agreements that will allow Barbados to arrest and hand over the prisoner to Trinidad. Barbados, as you know, settled the matter quickly after Mr. Thomas sued, and the other part is still pending in our courts. But it is obvious that people, officials in Trinidad, Barbados, and in Interpol were involved in this process. Not Miss Martin alone. She did not act alone. And her enthusiasm may have led her to decide to take that action without asking the hard questions that somebody like me would have asked with the warrant. You have a treaty with Barbados, you extradite. You have a CARICOM warrant. But Trinidad and Tobago didn't sign the agreement, so how are we going to move this man back? You telling me to go on a plane? I'm not going on a plane without these documents in my hand. Those questions, I don't know if they were asked and discarded, but it led to the outcome that we're seeing now, where people feel that she is the one who committed some offense, and as Dr. Deo Saran is arguing that she should be investigated more in line with the third matter than with this one with Brent Thomas, but there are other people saying the same thing. The third matter involves the arrest of Commissioner of Police Ella Harewood Christopher. And throughout the process, there was constant coordination, meetings with the DPP's office and Miss Martin and her team over this particular case. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. I do not think the arrest of the commissioner in her office, in uniform or on that particular day should have been done. Even though it has been declared to be legal by both the court and by the DPP, the optics and the situation demanded a different solution or outcome. I'm not saying Ms. Martin shouldn't do her job conscientiously, and if there's the evidence in accordance with the law to arrest and prosecute, then by all means go ahead. But the matter was so sensitive involving your boss that she should have insisted from the DPP's office that she get a document signed saying, in the circumstances of Ms. Harewood's alleged failure or refusal to cooperate with the investigation, then you are authorized in the law to arrest her. Signed by somebody in DPP's office, and then you move with that. But it appears to me that emotions went a little high and people started feeling themselves, including junior officers who were present. And hence we end up in this bacchanal now. The moral of the story is this: that in none of these instances has Miss Martin set out to do wrong, is responsible for the activities and actions that led to the investigation, made some unanimous or decision on her own to investigate. She followed the processes, but she has to learn to be a little cautious when dealing with issues involving certain sensitive people in the society. You could lock them up, but make sure the people above you who make decisions put it on paper and in writing so you could dot your I's and cross your T's and avoid being made a scapegoat, as I believe is happening now. A word to the wise is sufficient, I think, and I have said a lot of words. I'm not saying I'm wise and anybody is foolish, but I have experience about all kinds of things, many of which you all don't know and will not know. Good day, folks.